They called us criminals, Marcus Hale said, his voice flat and quiet. Fine, then let the criminal save her life. Sheriff Daniel Cross had just revoked the permit. 400 bikers were standing down, and a 6-year-old girl was running out of time. If you believe some people are worth fighting for, no matter who they are, subscribe to this channel right now, hit that notification bell, and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Laura Carter had not cried in front of her daughter in 11 days. She had cried in the bathroom at Hank's Diner with the tap running so nobody could hear her. She had cried in the parking lot of Redwood County General, sitting in her car for 20 minutes before she could make herself drive. She had cried at 2 a.m, standing over Emily's bed, watching the small rise and fall of the child's chest, counting breaths, the way other mothers counted blessings. But not in front of Emily. She refused that. Emily was 6 years old and she asked too many questions, and Laura could not afford to answer the one that mattered most. Mama, am I going to get better? You are going to be fine, baby. Promise. Laura had looked at her daughter's face, the wide brown eyes, the gap where she'd lost her first tooth 2 weeks before the diagnosis, the way she still smiled with her whole body, and she had said the word, promise. She drove home that night and sat at the kitchen table with the medical paperwork spread in front of her and a cup of coffee gone cold and did the math for the 14th time. The number did not change. It had not changed once in 14 attempts. $250,000. That was the cost of the treatment Emily needed. An experimental protocol at a facility in Seattle, one of only 3 centers in the country that offered it, with a documented 68% survival rate in children under 8. Without it, the doctors had been honest with Laura in the way doctors are honest when they have run out of polite alternatives. They had used words like progression and timeline and quality of remaining time. They had not used the word death, but they had built a sentence around the shape of it, and Laura had understood every word. Her insurance covered $30,000. She had $412 in savings. She had not told anyone at the diner. She was afraid that if she told people, she would start to cry. And if she started to cry, she might not stop. And if she didn't stop, she wouldn't be able to work. And if she couldn't work, she'd lose the job, and then Emily would have nothing at all. So she kept showing up, refilled coffee, smiled at the regulars, said, I'm hanging in there when people asked how she was doing, because that was the honest answer. She was hanging, both hands on the rope, knuckles white. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. It was left at the diner counter, no name on the outside, just Laura, written in blocky handwriting with a black marker. She almost didn't open it during her shift. She thought it was a note from a customer, maybe a complaint, maybe a coupon for a tire place. She tucked it in her apron and forgot about it until she was wiping down the counter at a closing time. Inside was a single index card. We heard about Emily. We want to help. Come to the Crossroads garage on Route 9 tomorrow morning at 10. Ask for Marcus. Hey. She read it 3 times. She knew what HA meant. Everybody in Redwood County knew what HA meant. She didn't sleep that night. She lay in the dark and thought about everything she'd ever heard about the Hells Angels, the rumors, the headlines, the things people said with their voices dropped low. She thought about the fact that nobody else had offered. Not the church she'd attended twice a year since Emily was born. Not the county assistance office that had put her on a 14-week waiting list. Not the medical fundraising platform where she'd set up a page and raised $640 in 3 months and then stopped checking because the gap between what she had and what she needed was too large to look at directly. She was at Crossroads Garage at 9:45. The man who came out to meet her was not what she expected. She wasn't sure exactly what she had expected, something from a movie, probably something threatening and theatrical. Marcus Hale was 52 years old and built like a man who had spent 30 years doing physical work. His gray hair was slicked back. His beard was trimmed tight. His arms were covered in tattoos that had blurred slightly at the edges with age. He wore a black sleeveless vest with the club patch on the back, and he walked toward her with his hands visible and his pace unhurried, like a man who understood that she needed a moment to decide whether to run. He didn't offer to shake her hand first. He waited. You, Laura, he said. Yes. Marcus Hale. He nodded toward the garage. You want coffee? It's not great, but it's hot. She followed him inside. He didn't make her explain the situation. He already knew it. Someone at the diner had told someone who had told someone else, and the information had moved through Redwood County the way information moves in a small town fast, thorough, and without anyone quite being able to say exactly how it got from point A to point B. 250,000, he said. Yes. Seattle facility. Yes. Timeline. Laura pressed her lips together. The doctor said that without the treatment Emily has, she stopped. She started again. They said we're looking at months, not years. That's what they said. Months, not years. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Not uncomfortable quiet, thinking quiet. We want to do a charity ride, he said. Full permitted event. Hundreds of riders, corporate sponsors, local businesses, online donations, merchandise. We've done fundraisers before. Not at this scale, but we know how. Laura stared at him. Why? Because we can. That's not, why Emily? Why us? Marcus picked up his coffee. He looked at it rather than at her. I had a daughter, he said, and she'd be 24 now. He didn't say anything else about that. Laura didn't ask. We're going to need your permission to use Emily's name and story in the promotion materials, he said back to business. We'll set up a dedicated account, a nonprofit fiscal sponsor, full transparency on every dollar. You'll have access to every record. We're not going to touch your money or your family's story without your eyes on it. People are going to talk, Laura said, about who's doing this. People already talk, Marcus said. That's never stopped us. She nodded slowly. Okay, she said. Okay, let's do it. What happened next moved faster than Laura expected. Within 48 hours, Marcus had assembled the core of the organizing committee. 6 men from the club who had done event planning before, along with a local attorney named Ray Dominguez, who had been doing pro bono work for the Angels for 9 years and knew every regulation on the books. The permit application went into the county office on a Thursday morning. They applied for Route 7, the main highway corridor through Redwood County, with a planned date 5 weeks out, 400 expected riders minimum, a full coordination package, traffic management, medical stations, sponsor booths, live music at the endpoint, a dedicated donation platform. By the end of the first week, 63 local businesses had pledged sponsorship. By the end of the second week, the online donation page had raised $41,000. A news station from the city had done a 90-second piece on Emily that got shared 40,000 times. A regional motorcycle association had reached out to commit another 200 riders from outside the county. A children's clothing brand had offered to donate 2% of online sales during the event weekend. Emily, who had been told only that some people want to help, had drawn a picture of motorcycles for Marcus. Laura had brought it to the garage. Marcus had taped it to the wall beside the door. The town of Redwood County, in the complicated way that small towns have of holding contradictions, began to believe that this might actually work. That was when Sheriff Daniel Cross called a press conference. Laura watched it on her phone during her break at the diner, standing in the back hall beside the mop bucket. Cross was 51 years old, square-jawed, silver-templed, with the particular kind of handsomeness that reads well on a campaign poster. He had announced 6 weeks earlier that he was running for state legislature. His platform was built almost entirely on law and order, and he had been moving carefully and methodically through every camera opportunity the county had offered him. This one he did not want to miss. The Redwood County Sheriff's Department, he said at the podium, his voice measured and grave, has an obligation to protect the public safety of every resident in this county. That obligation does not pause for spectacle. It does not yield to manipulation, and it does not excuse the laundering of a criminal organization's image through the exploitation of a sick child. Laura felt her stomach drop. The permit application submitted by the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club for a so-called charity event on Route 7 has been reviewed by this department, and I have made the determination that this permit will not be issued. The safety concerns are too significant. The organizational history of this group is too well documented, and the potential for this event to be used as cover for activities that this department will not permit in Redwood County is too substantial to ignore. He paused. He looked directly into the camera. If these men truly want to help this child, they are welcome to write a check like anyone else. A permit for a mass gathering is not a right. It is a privilege, and it will not be granted to a gang. The word gang landed like a slap. Laura lowered her phone. Debbie, the other waitress, had appeared in the hallway without Laura noticing. She was looking at Laura's face. "That son of a bitch," Debbie said quietly. Laura didn't say anything. She put her phone in her pocket and went back out to refill coffee. At the garage, Marcus Hale heard the press conference the same way half the county did on a phone screen, standing up watching it once all the way through without saying a word. Darnell, his vice president, was the one who broke the silence. "So what do we do?" Marcus set the phone down on the workbench. He was quiet for a long moment. "We get the permit," he said. "He just revoked it." "He hasn't revoked it yet. He announced he would. There's a difference." Marcus looked at Darnell. "Get Ray on the phone." Ray Dominguez was on the phone within the hour. He had watched the press conference twice and had already identified 3 separate procedural grounds on which the revocation could be challenged. The permit had been submitted through the proper channels, reviewed and acknowledged, and Cross had not cited any specific legal basis for denial, only characterization. That wasn't how permit law worked. Cross knew it. Ray knew it. The question was how fast they could move and how much noise Cross was willing to make to slow them down. "He's going to make a lot of noise," Ray said. "That press conference wasn't legal strategy. That was theater." "Why?" Marcus asked. "Because he needs a villain," Ray said. "He needs something to run against. He picked you." Marcus leaned back against the wall. He rubbed the back of his neck. "What does he know?" Darnell asked Ray. "About what?" "About us. About anything he could actually use." Ray was quiet for a beat. "That's the thing. Nothing. The chapter's clean. Marcus, you know that. Every financial record, every activity in the last 4 years, it's clean. Cross knows it too. That's not what this is about." "Then what is it about?" It's about what it looks like," Ray said. "He doesn't need to prove anything. He just needs to say it loud enough and long enough for it to become the story. Bikers, criminal gang, exploiting a child. He says it for 4 weeks, and that becomes the headline, and he gets to be the man who stopped it. Campaign ad writes itself." Marcus was silent. Then he said, "Ray, I need you to do something for me." "Name it." "I need you to look at Daniel Cross, not at his campaign, not at his press conferences, at his department, his budget, his asset seizures, his county contracts, every dollar that moved through that office in the last 3 years." There was a pause. "Marcus," Ray said carefully, "what are you expecting to find?" "I don't know yet," Marcus said. But what a man who goes this hard this fast to kill a children's charity, he's protecting something. People don't take that kind of risk without a reason." Another pause. Longer. "I'll make some calls," Ray said. The first media pushback against Cross came the next morning. A local blogger named Jenny Walsh, who had been covering Redwood County politics for 12 years, from a spare bedroom in her house on Elm Street, published a piece at 6 a.m. titled, "Cross Invokes Public Safety to Block Charity. Ride, but what safety concern exactly?" The piece was measured, documented, and devastating in the way that only local journalists who know exactly where to look can be. She had read the permit application. She had read the public safety guidelines. She had found 0 specific safety concerns cited by Cross's office. She had also found that the county had issued permits for 3 previous large-scale motorcycle events in the past 5 years without incident. The piece got shared 12,000 times by noon. By 2 in the afternoon, the comments section at the diner had turned entirely in one direction. The regulars were talking. The man at the counter who always ordered the same thing, ham and eggs extra toast, said to Laura, without preamble, "That sheriff's a snake. Everybody knows it. This just proves it." Laura nodded and refilled his coffee. She was trying not to feel hope. Hope had a weight to it, and she couldn't afford to carry it and then have it taken away. She was trying to stay practical, to take things one day at a time, to not let Emily see her expression shift too far in either direction. But when she got home that afternoon, Emily was sitting at the kitchen table, and she had a piece of paper in front of her, and she had drawn a picture of a little girl on a motorcycle. "That's me," Emily said, pointing at the little girl. "Is it? I'm going to ride a motorcycle when I get better." Laura sat down across from her daughter. She pressed her hands flat on the table and breathed. "You're going to have to get a lot taller first," she said. "Marcus said he'd teach me." Laura looked at her daughter. "When did you talk to Marcus?" "He called. You were in the shower. I answered the phone." "Emily." "He's nice, Mama." Emily tilted her head. "He sounds like a big bear, but he's nice." Laura sat there for a moment. "Yeah," she said softly. "He is." That night, Marcus was in the garage when his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. He almost didn't answer. "Mr. Hale, The voice was controlled, professional, with something underneath it that Marcus couldn't immediately name. Who's this? Someone who works close to the sheriff's department and prefers to stay anonymous. I have information that's relevant to what you're going through. I need to know if you're interested. Marcus was quiet for a beat. Talk. Not on the phone, in person, tomorrow. You know the rest stop on Route 12, mile marker 44. Marcus knew it. 9 a.m., the voice said. Then the call ended. Marcus set the phone down. He looked at the drawing Emily had made the motorcycles, the careful crayon lines, the way she had drawn wheels that were slightly too large for the frames. He picked up his phone again and called Darnell. You carrying tomorrow morning? Always, Darnell said. White by. Route 12, rest stop, 850. Don't make it obvious. There was a brief pause. What's happening? Don't know yet, Marcus said, but something is. He hung up and sat with the darkness in the hum of the garage and the sound of his own breathing. Cross had made his first move publicly. Marcus had just been handed the first piece of something he didn't fully understand yet, but he understood enough to know that whatever Daniel Cross was hiding someone inside his own walls had just decided they were done protecting it, and that changed everything. The man at the Route 12 rest stop arrived 7 minutes early. Marcus noticed that first. Early meant nervous. Nervous meant real. He was maybe 40 medium build, wearing civilian clothes that were slightly too careful. The kind of outfit a man puts on when he's trying not to look like what he is. He was standing beside a gray sedan with his hands in his jacket pockets, and he kept checking the road in both directions without turning his head all the way. Just the eyes, the way people do when they've spent time learning not to be obvious about it. Marcus pulled in alone. Darnell was already there, had been since 8:40, parked at the far end where the trees gave cover. Neither of them acknowledged each other. The man watched Marcus park and walk toward him. You're Hale, he said. You called me, Marcus said. The man exhaled, his breath fogged slightly in the morning air. My name doesn't matter. What matters is what I know and what I'm willing to hand over. Then hand it over. I need to know you're serious about going after Cross. Marcus looked at him steadily. I'm serious about getting a permit for a charity ride so a 6-year-old girl can get treated before she runs out of time. Cross put himself in the middle of that. Whatever happens to him as a result is his own doing. The man reached into his jacket and produced a folded envelope. He held it but didn't extend it yet. 3 years ago, he said, Cross restructured the asset forfeiture program in this county, changed the accounting procedures, moved the audit cycle from quarterly to annual. At the time, the county board approved it because he told them it reduced administrative overhead. Marcus said nothing. What it actually did, the man continued, was create a 90-day window between seizures and reporting. In that window, assets, cash vehicles, property were processed through a holding company registered in Delaware. The company is called Redwood Asset Management, LLC. It has no employees, no physical address, and no operating history. It exists on paper to receive transfers and distribute them. He paused. Some of those distributions went to a PAC that has been funding Cross's legislative campaign. The envelope came out. Marcus took it. He didn't open it. Why are you doing this? Marcus asked. The man looked at the road. Because he seized my brother-in-law's truck. 3 years ago, my brother-in-law runs a landscaping company. His employee got arrested for possession, not him. The employee and Cross's department took the work truck under civil forfeiture, said it was used in drug activity. My brother-in-law lost his business. He had 4 guys working for him. All 4 lost their jobs. He stopped. The charges against the employee were dropped 6 months later. The truck was never returned. I've been waiting for the right moment. And a charity ride is the right moment. A charity ride with 400 riders and national media coverage is the right moment, the man said flatly. Because when this goes public, the story already has a face on it. Emily Carter makes it human. Cross doesn't just look corrupt. He looks like a man who sacrificed a sick child to protect his money. Marcus was quiet for a moment. You're going to need to give this to someone who can verify it, the man said. I can't be attached to it. I work close enough to the department that if my name surfaces, I lose everything. Understood. There's more in there than what I described. Bank routing numbers, transfer dates, 2 names inside the department who were on the payroll for looking the other way during audit cycles. Marcus looked down at the envelope in his hand. One more thing, the man said. He looked Marcus directly in the eye for the first time. Cross knows you're building something. He has a source somewhere, I don't know who. He's not going to wait for you to finish. He's going to move first. Then he walked back to the gray sedan and drove away without looking back. Marcus stood there for a moment. Then he walked back to his bike, pulled out his phone, and called Ray Dominguez. You awake? I've been awake since you called Darnell last night, Ray said. What did you get? Something big, Marcus said. How fast can you get to the garage? Ray was there in 40 minutes. He read through the contents of the envelope at the workbench with the same focused silence he used in depositions, or not reacting, just absorbing his pen, moving occasionally to mark a page. Marcus stood with his coffee and watched. When Ray finished, he set the papers down. This is real, he said. You sure? The routing numbers are formatted correctly for the institution they reference. The LLC registration matches public records I can verify in about 20 minutes. The names, Ray tapped the last page. One of these names I recognize. He's the department's internal audit officer. Darnell, who had been leaning against the wall, let out a slow breath. So Cross built his whole system through the one guy who was supposed to catch exactly this. It's not subtle when you lay it out like this, Ray said. But that's the thing about corruption that's been running clean for 3 years. It starts to feel invisible. You stop being careful because nothing has happened. You start to believe the architecture is permanent. Marcus set down his coffee. How long to get this to someone federal? Depends how we do it. If we go through normal channels, weeks. If I have a contact I've been sitting on for 2 years who works out of the regional FBI office and owes me a very significant favor. Ray picked up his phone. Maybe 48 hours to a preliminary conversation. Make the call, Marcus said. Marcus. Ray held the phone but didn't dial. He looked up. The moment I make this call, it becomes real in a different way. Cross is going to feel the pressure even before charges come. Men like him, when they feel pressure, they don't back down. They escalate. I know. I need you to understand what escalate might look like. I know what it looks like, Ray. A beat of silence. Ray Dalway cross-escalated in 43 hours. It came through media first the way his moves always did. A statement from the sheriff's office released at 5 in the afternoon to catch the evening news cycle, announcing that the Redwood County Sheriff's Department had launched a formal investigation into the Hells Angels chapter's financial activities in connection with the charity event. The statement used the phrase suspected money laundering and the phrase exploitation of charitable donations. It named the online fundraising page specifically and said the department was pursuing a court order to freeze the account pending investigation. The account held $64,000, Emily Carter's $64,000. Laura found out from Debbie, who texted her during the dinner rush. Laura read the text and stood very still for a moment with a full coffee pot in her hand, and then she walked to the back hall and set the coffee pot down on a shelf and stood there with her back against the wall, breathing through her nose until the shaking in her hands stopped. Then she walked back out and finished her shift. Marcus heard it from Ray, who had already pulled up the legal filing and identified what Cross was actually doing. It's a tactical move, Ray said over the phone, his voice tight. He can't freeze the account permanently without actual evidence, but he can file for a temporary hold and drag the process out long enough to blow past your event date. By the time we fight it in court, Emily's timeline. How long to fight it? Marcus asked. 3 weeks minimum, probably 5. Marcus said nothing. There's more, Ray said. The investigation announcement is going to scare off sponsors. 3 of your corporate sponsors have morality clauses in their agreements. If there's an active criminal investigation attached to the event, they can pull out without penalty. Have any of them called yet? 2 have, Ray said. I've been on the phone managing it. But Marcus, we need to move on the federal angle. Today, not this week, today. Marcus had already made a decision by the time Ray finished talking. Get me a number for the regional FBI office contact. I just called him this morning. I need to call him directly, man to man, not through counsel. A pause. That's irregular. So is using a sick child as a political prop, Marcus said. Number Ray? He had it in 2 minutes. The call lasted 11 minutes. Marcus did not record it. He stood in the back of the garage alone and spoke quietly and completely, without the kind of language that could be misread. He told the agent what he had. He described the envelope without revealing the source. He gave two of the routing numbers from memory. He had read the documents 3 times and retained what mattered, and cited the LLC registration. The agent asked 2 questions. The first was procedural. The second was, how solid is your source? Solid enough to know things that aren't in any public record, Marcus said. Silence. I'm going to need 48 hours, the agent said. We may not have 48 hours, Marcus said. Cross-filed to freeze $64,000 raised for a 6-year-old girl this afternoon. He's going to keep moving. Another silence. Shorter. I'll make some calls tonight, the agent said. Don't do anything visible. The call ended. Marcus stood there for a moment. Then he walked out to the front of the garage and looked at the motorcycle frames lined up against the wall and the workbenches and the tools hung in neat rows. He looked at Emily's drawings still taped to the wall beside the door, the motorcycles with their slightly too large wheels. Darnell appeared at his shoulder. What did they say? They said don't do anything visible. Darnell nodded slowly. Which means, Marcus said, we do everything else. What happened over the next 72 hours was not visible, but it was not small. Ray filed an emergency motion to block the account freeze, citing procedural deficiencies in Cross's court filing and attaching 40 pages of supporting documentation, including the full permit application, the nonprofit fiscal sponsor agreement, and a sworn statement from the CPA, who had been managing the donations. The motion landed on a judge's desk at 7:30 the next morning. At the same time, Ginny Walsh published her second piece. This one was different. This one had numbers. She had pulled the county asset forfeiture records, which were technically public, though buried deep enough in county filing systems that nobody had looked at them in 3 years, and she had done what Marcus had done, but in the open and on the record. She hadn't found the LLC. She hadn't found the AC connections. But she had found the accounting structure change of the shift from quarterly to annual audits, and she had found that the total value of assets seized under Cross's leadership was 4 times the state average for a county of Redwood's size. She had found that the return rate assets returned to owners after charges were dropped or rejected was less than 6%. The piece ran at 6 a.m. with the headline, Redwood County seizures at 4 times state average and almost nothing comes back. By 9 a.m., 3 other outlets had picked it up. By noon, a state-level investigative reporter named Ben Thayer had called Ginny Walsh and asked if she'd be willing to share her source documentation. Cross held another press conference at 2 in the afternoon. He was less controlled this time. Not obviously he was a trained public performer, and he held the surface together, but Marcus watched the live stream from the garage and saw it. The jaw set slightly tighter, the pause before certain words that wasn't quite natural. The way his eyes moved to the side when he was answering questions, not in the manner of someone thinking, but in the manner of someone calculating. The investigation into the so-called charity event is ongoing, Cross said. This department's obligation is to the taxpayers of Redwood County, not to the public relations campaign of an outlaw motorcycle gang. We will follow the evidence wherever it leads, and we will not be deterred by media pressure or political noise. A reporter at the back asked, Sheriff, can you point to any specific criminal activity you're investigating? Cross said, we don't comment on the specifics of active investigations. The reporter followed up, is there any evidence of financial impropriety in the charity accounts? Or is this investigation based solely on the organizational identity of the sponsors? Cross said, next question. Marcus turned off the live stream. Darnell was watching his face. He's cracking. No, Marcus said. He's scared. There's a difference. Cracking is when they give up. Scared is when they get dangerous. He was right. Cross made his next move that same evening. 3 deputies showed up at the homes of 2 club members, not Marcus, not Darnell, but 2 of the men on the charity event committee at 7:30 p.m. with what they claimed were routine inquiries related to the investigation. The deputies were in plain clothes but drove marked vehicles. They asked questions about the charity ride, about Marcus Hale personally, about financial records, about the garage. They were polite in the way that contains a threat, the way that says, we know where you live and we came at dinner time on purpose. Both men called Marcus immediately afterward. They asked me about your finances, one of them said. His name was Pete, and he had a voice that Marcus had never heard shake before. It was shaking now slightly. They asked if I knew about any money you had outside of the garage business. Off the books money. They kept saying off the books money. What did you tell them? I told them to talk to my lawyer. Good. Marcus, a beat. My wife is scared. Marcus closed his eyes for half a second. I know. Tell her I'm sorry she's going through this. Tell her it won't be much longer. How do you know that? Because men who do things like this in broad daylight are men who think they're untouchable, Marcus said. And men who think they're untouchable stop being careful. Cross just showed up at two of our guys' houses on the same night he held a press conference. He's not being strategic anymore. He's being emotional. And emotional is where people make mistakes. He ended the call and sat with it for a moment. Then he called Ray. Cross sent deputies to Pete's house and Tommy's house tonight. Silence on Ray's end. Then he's trying to intimidate witnesses before the federal angle develops. Can we use it? Depends on how the deputies conducted themselves. If there was any threat implied or direct, Pete said they were polite. Polite can still be harassment if the intent is to coerce, Ray said. I want both of them to write down everything they remember from tonight. Every question, every word, every tone, tonight while it's fresh. I want dated signed statements. I'll call them back. Marcus, Ray's voice dropped. The FBI contact called me an hour ago. They're moving. Marcus went very still. What does moving mean? It means they've opened a preliminary inquiry. It means they're pulling financial records with federal authority instead of waiting for the county to cooperate. It means this is no longer just us versus Cross in Redwood County. Ray paused. It also means we have to be very careful. If Cross gets wind of the federal angle before they're ready to act, he'll destroy what he can. Yes. Then we don't let him get wind of it, Marcus said. What do we do in the meantime? We keep building the legal permit challenge. We keep the community visible. We keep the media in the story. We make it impossible for Cross to act without the whole country watching. A pause. And we don't do anything that gives him a legitimate reason to bring the weight of law enforcement down on this chapter. We haven't done anything wrong, Ray. I know that, you know that, but Cross doesn't need you to have done something wrong. He needs the appearance. Don't give him the appearance. The next morning, something happened that nobody had planned for. Laura Carter showed up at the garage at 8 a.m. She had Emily with her. Emily was wearing a blue jacket with a cartoon cat on the front, and her hair was in two uneven pigtails that she had apparently done herself. She walked in looking at everything with the focused curiosity of a 6-year-old who has been told this is an important place and has decided to perform accordingly. Marcus came out of the back when he heard them come in. Emily looked up at him. She said, "You're bigger than you sound on the phone." Marcus crouched down to her level. "You're smaller than I expected." Emily considered this gravely. "I'm going to be bigger. I believe you." Laura had her arms crossed and her jaw set. She looked tired in the specific way that mothers who have not been sleeping look tired, not haggard, but like a person who is holding themselves together through the sheer force of deciding to. She waited until Emily had drifted toward the motorcycles lining the wall to look at Marcus directly. "Tell me the truth," she said quietly. "Is this still going to happen?" "Yes." "The accounts. Ray is fighting the freeze. We're going to win that. It's a procedural challenge. Crossover reached. The sponsors, 2 pulled back, 4 more came in. Net positive." He looked at her steadily. "The ride is happening, Laura. I need you to hold on to that." She looked at him for a long moment. "I don't need you to manage me," she said. "I need you to be straight with me. I am being straight with you. Is Emily going to be okay?" Marcus didn't look away. "The ride is happening, the money is getting raised, and Emily is getting to Seattle." A beat. "That's not management, that's a promise." Laura held his eyes for another second. Then something in her face shifted, not breaking, nothing like that, but releasing slightly the way a fist does when it opens. From across the garage, Emily called out, "Mama, this one has a dragon on it." Laura turned to look at her daughter standing beside a bike with a flame detail on the tank, both hands pressed to her cheeks in delight. "I see it, baby," she said. Marcus straightened up and stood next to Laura for a moment, both of them watching the 6-year-old examine a motorcycle with the seriousness of a buyer at an auction. "She's got some fight in her," Marcus said quietly. "She gets it from somewhere," Laura said. And for the first time in a long time, the weight behind the words wasn't grief. It was something that felt cautiously like the start of pride. That afternoon, Cross received a call from his deputy chief. The deputy chief's name was Garrett, and he had been with the department for 18 years, and he had a gift for keeping his voice completely neutral, even when the information he was delivering was not neutral at all. "We have a problem," Garrett said. Cross was in his car. He said, "What kind?" "The kind that wears a federal ID," Garrett said. "Someone made inquiries today about Redwood Asset Management, ALLC, through a federal financial crimes channel." The inside of the car went very quiet. "How do you know that?" Cross said. "Because I have a contact at the institution that received the inquiry notice," Garrett said. "It came in this morning. It's preliminary, but it's formal." Cross did not say anything for a long moment. "Garrett," he said finally, "we need to talk in person tonight." "Yes, sir," Garrett said. "We do." Cross hung up and sat there. The calculation was happening behind his eyes. Marcus could not see, it could not know it was happening in that moment. But it was the same calculation that men like Cross always run when the ground shifts. How much time do I have and what can I still control? The answers, though, Cross did not yet know. This were less than he thought and less than he needed. Because 40 miles away in a regional FBI field office, an agent was pulling 3 years of financial transfer records. And the architecture that Cross had built so carefully, the invisible system that had run so clean for so long, was starting to come apart at the edges, not with a crack, not with a sound, but with the quiet, irreversible movement of something that has already begun to fall. The call came at 4:53 in the morning. Marcus was already awake. He had not slept more than 3 hours in 2 days, and his body had stopped pretending and otherwise. So he was sitting at the workbench in the garage with a cup of coffee and Ray's legal documents spread in front of him when his phone lit up with Darnell's name. He picked up on the first ring. "They're moving," Darnell said. His voice was completely flat, which meant he was scared. Darnell only went flat when he was scared. 8 vehicles. I count at least 20 deputies, full tactical gear. They're 2 blocks out." Marcus set down the coffee cup. "How long?" he said. 3 minutes, maybe less." "Wake everybody up. Nobody moves. Nobody raises a hand. Nobody says a word without a lawyer present. You understand?" "Marcus, say you understand." A breath. "I understand." 3 minutes, Marcus said. "I'll be at the front door." He hung up. He stood. He straightened his vest. He walked to the front of the garage and unlocked the door and stepped outside and stood with his hands visible at his sides in the dark waiting. They came with flashbangs. The first one hit the side of the building, and Marcus felt the concussion in his chest before he heard the sound. Then glass breaking somewhere. Then shouting not one voice but many voices, the specific layered chaos of a coordinated entry, boots on concrete, orders being repeated, the particular violence of men moving through a space they have already decided belongs to them. Marcus did not move. A deputy in full tactical gear was in him in seconds, hand on his shoulder spinning him, and Marcus went with it without resistance, let his hands come up and back, felt the cuffs click into place, and said nothing. His face was completely still. Not the stillness of shock, the stillness of a man who knew this was coming and decided in advance exactly how he would meet it. They put him against the wall. Around him, he could hear his men being pulled out of the back rooms. Voices raised the sound of equipment being moved and overturned. One of the younger members, a 23-year-old named Kyle, who had only been with the chapter 8 months, said something too loud, something defensive and frightened, and Marcus called out, calm carrying Kyle. Not a word. I mean it. Silence from Kyle. The deputy supervising the entry turned to look at Marcus. You want to make this easier, the deputy said. You tell us where the financial records are. My attorney's name is Ray Dominguez, Marcus said. His number is in my phone. You're welcome to call him. We have a warrant. I know you do, Marcus said. That doesn't change the number. They kept him cuffed against the wall for 40 minutes while they went through every room. He could hear them. He cataloged the sounds the way he had learned to catalog things over 30 years of navigating situations that could go wrong in multiple directions at once. Drawers pulled boxes, moved computers, unplugged voices talking at low volume that carried anyway in the concrete space. Nobody found anything that wasn't already there because there was nothing to find. Ray had been clear about that months ago. The chapter's books were clean, the garage's accounts were clean, the charity accounts were under the fiscal sponsor's umbrella, and therefore not even legally the club's property to begin with. Cross's team could pull every record in the building, and they would leave with exactly nothing useful. But that wasn't the point. Marcus understood that at the wall, cuffed with the flashbang residue still in the air. The raid wasn't a legal strategy. It was a message. It was Cross saying, I can do this. I can come to your place at 5 in the morning and put your hands behind your back and tear through everything you've built, and there is nothing you can do about it. It was a demonstration of reach. It was meant to make them feel small. It had the opposite effect. By 6:15 a.m., someone had posted a video. Marcus didn't know who. He found out later it was a neighbor 3 buildings down who had been woken by the flashbang and looked out and started recording on instinct. The video was 40 seconds long. It showed the tactical vehicles, the deputies in gear, Marcus standing against the wall with his hands cuffed completely still, chin up, not struggling, not shouting, just standing, just waiting. By 7 a.m., the video had 40,000 views. By 8:30, it had 112,000. By 9, Jenny Walsh had embedded it in a piece with the headline, SWAT raid on Hell's Angels garage produces 0 arrests charity event, organizer held for 40 minutes, then released. The phrase 0 arrests did a particular kind of work in that headline. Cross had mobilized 20 deputies in full tactical gear at 5 in the morning and had walked away with nothing to charge. In the court of public opinion, that reads one way and one way only. Ray Dominguez was at the garage by 7:30 before the video had even hit 100,000 views. He walked the space, documented the damage, overturned shelving, a broken window from the flashbang impact, a desktop computer with a cracked monitor, several file drawers pulled entirely off their tracks, and took photographs of everything. Then he sat with Marcus at the workbench and said, "They made a mistake." "I know," Marcus said. "Not just strategically, legally." Ray spread his notes. The warrant specified financial records related to the charity event. That's the scope. But based on what you're describing, they searched every room in the building, including the mechanical bay and the storage area, which have no connection to charity finances. That's outside the warrant scope. That's an illegal search as to anything they found in those areas. They didn't find anything. Doesn't matter. The conduct itself is actionable. Ray looked at him. "I'm filing a civil rights complaint today. Excessive force, improper warrant execution, and unlawful detention because they had no basis to hold you for 40 minutes when you offered no resistance and there were no charges." Marcus rubbed the back of his neck. "How does that help us right now?" "It doesn't help you right now," Ray said. "It helps you later. It also helps us in the court of public opinion, which is where this fight is actually happening." Marcus looked at the cracked monitor, at the drawers on the floor. "Where are we on the federal inquiry?" he said. Ray lowered his voice even though they were alone. "I spoke to the agent this morning before I came here. The raid actually accelerated things. The federal side sees a county sheriff conducting what looks like targeted harassment of witnesses to his own corruption. That changes the urgency calculation." Marcus absorbed that. "How much time are we looking at before the event?" 9 days, Ray said. "And the permit, the emergency motion is still in front of Judge Holloway. Cross's account freeze was denied yesterday. I didn't get to tell you before the raid. Judge Holloway ruled it procedurally deficient. The $64,000 is unfrozen as of yesterday afternoon." Marcus looked up. "The donations went back up this morning after the video went viral," Ray said. "As of an hour ago, the account is at $106,000. The number sat in the air between them. $106,000. 6 days ago, it had been 64. Cross had raided the garage at 5 in the morning, and by 9, the same morning, the charity had gained $42,000 in donations from people watching the video. The man had spent 20 deputies and a full tactical operation and had produced net the largest single-day fundraising surge of the entire campaign. Ray watched Marcus's face process this. "He helped us," Darnell said from the doorway. He had been listening. "The idiot actually helped us." "Don't get comfortable with that," Marcus said. "Desperate men who realize they've made things worse don't slow down. They speed up." He was right, and the proof came 2 hours later. Cross held no press conference this time. Instead, his office released a written statement that was emailed to media contacts at 11 a.m. The statement said that the search operation had been conducted in full compliance with a valid court-issued warrant. It said that no wrongdoing had been alleged against any specific individual, and the operation was part of an ongoing investigation. It said, and this was the line that every outlet pulled, that the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club's public relations campaign, including their exploitation of a child's illness for fundraising purposes, does not exempt them from the scrutiny of law enforcement. Exploitation of a child's illness. That phrase hit Redwood County like a match on dry wood. At the diner, 3 separate tables of regulars were talking about it when Laura came in for her shift. She heard it when she pushed through the door. The word exploitation applied to her, applied to Emily. She put on her apron. She picked up her order pad. She served 4 tables before she went to the back hall and allowed herself 2 minutes of being completely furious. Her hands were shaking when she pulled out her phone and called Marcus. "Did you see what he said?" "Yes." Exploitation. Her voice was very controlled. The control was doing a lot of work. He called me, he called Emily. Laura. He stood behind a podium and called me a bad mother in legal language. I know. Tell me you have something on him. Tell me this isn't just going to keep going and going until we have something on him, Marcus said. I can't tell you everything right now, but I need you to trust me when I say that Cross is not going to win this. He's winning right now, she said. It looks like that from where you're standing. It doesn't look like that from where I'm standing. A long pause. How's Emily today, he asked. Laura exhaled. She asked me when she gets to see the motorcycles again. Tell her soon. Marcus? She pressed the back of her hand to her mouth for a second, steadying. I need this to work. It's going to work, he said. Go finish your shift. Take care of yourself. Let me handle Cross. She hung up. She went back out. She refilled coffee and smiled at the regulars and did not let a single person see the inside of what she was carrying. Marcus hung up and turned to Darnell. Get me the names of every business that pulled their sponsorship this week. There were 4. I want to call each of them personally. Darnell raised an eyebrow. You think that's going to work? The video has 130,000 views, Marcus said. Cross called a grieving mother an exploiter in a press release. Every sponsor who pulled out is sitting on the wrong side of public sentiment right now, and they know it. A personal call from me gives them a face-saving way back in. He picked up his phone. Get me the names. He made all 4 calls himself. He was direct and brief and did not apologize for anything. He said, I understand why you stepped back. I want you to know the event is moving forward and the community support has only grown. The door is open if you want back in. 3 of the 4 said they'd think about it. By end of day 2 had formally recommitted. The 3rd came back the following morning. The permit ruling came down that afternoon. Judge Holloway had reviewed Cross's denial and Ray's emergency challenge, and she had issued a 12-page ruling that was notable for several things, including the clarity of its language and the speed at which it had been written. The ruling found that Cross's denial of the permit had not cited any specific statutory basis under Redwood County or state law, that the characterization of the organizers as a criminal organization without any current charges or convictions did not constitute a legal basis for permit denial, and that the First Amendment implications of denying a peaceful public assembly permit on the basis of organizational identity were, in the judge's words, significant and cannot be disregarded. The permit was granted. Ray sent the ruling to Marcus in a text with no message, just the document. Marcus read it twice. Then he called Darnell, and he didn't say anything for a moment, and Darnell knew what that meant. We're on, Darnell said. We're on, Marcus said, but Cross was not done. The next morning, Pete, the member whose house the deputies had visited, called Marcus at 7 a.m. with something new in his voice, something between anger and fear that Marcus had not heard from Pete before. Someone followed Sandra last night, Pete said. Sandra was his wife. From the grocery store to the house, dark sedan, sat outside for 20 minutes, then drove off. Marcus was very still. She get a plate. Partial, she was shaking too bad. Is she okay? She's scared, I'm scared. A pause. Marcus, this isn't just about the ride anymore. This man is following my wife. Pete, look at me through the phone. You listening? Yeah. I need Sandra to write down everything. Time, location, partial plate, make of the car, anything she remembers. Same format as the other statement. I need it today. And then what? And then it goes to Ray, and Ray puts it in a federal civil rights filing that goes to the same people who are already looking at Cross's finances. Because what Cross just did surveilling the family member of a potential witness in a federal inquiry, that's not a county law enforcement action anymore. That's witness intimidation. That's a federal crime. Silence on Pete's end. He doesn't know about the federal angle, Pete said slowly. No, he doesn't. So he thinks he can still scare us off. He thinks he's in a local fight, Marcus said. He is not in a local fight. That evening, the anonymous source called back. Same number, same blocked ID. Marcus picked up on the first ring. You saw the raid, the man said. Hard to miss. That wasn't Cross's call alone. Garrett pushed for it. Garrett is the deputy chief, the man I mentioned who ran the audit structure. He's the one with the most to lose if the financial records surface. He convinced Cross that a show of force would make your chapter stand down. How'd that work out? Marcus said. A short pause that might have been the closest thing to a laugh the man could manage. Garrett is panicking. He's been moving files, not digitally, physically. Paper records. He's been taking them home over the last 3 nights. Marcus absorbed that. Can that be documented? The department's security camera system logs every keycard entry and exit, the man said. Garrett has badged in after hours 3 times this week at unusual hours. That's in the system. Can you get that log? A pause. I already have it. Send it to Ray Dominguez tonight. Mr. Hale. The man's voice shifted slightly, more careful. I want you to understand something. What Garrett is moving, if those records disappear, the federal case gets harder to make. They can still work from the financial transfers, but the paper trail from inside the department is what connects the transfers to specific decisions Cross and Garrett made. Without that, it's circumstantial. How fast can Garrett move those records? He's been at it 3 nights. I don't know how much is left. Then we need to move faster. Marcus thought for a second. The federal contact, if I told him that a county official was actively destroying evidence related to an open federal inquiry, would that change the timeline? Obstruction of justice changes every timeline, the man said quietly. Marcus called Ray before the call was even fully ended. Ray answered, and Marcus gave him 30 seconds of information, clean and without preamble. Ray's voice went very quiet in the way it did when he was switching into the gear that he reserved for serious things. If Garrett is destroying records related to an active federal inquiry, that's a separate federal crime from the original corruption charges. I need that security log tonight. It's coming. Marcus. A pause. This is moving very fast. Emily doesn't have slow, Marcus said. Ray breathed. I'll call the agent. The security log arrived in Ray's email at 10:47 that night. He forwarded it to the federal contact with a cover note that was 3 sentences long and used the phrase active evidence destruction twice. At 11:15, the agent called Ray back. At 11:40, Ray called Marcus. They're moving up the timeline, Ray said. His voice was steady, but Marcus had known the man long enough to hear the thing underneath the steadiness. They want everything we have, the envelope contents, the routing numbers, the LLC documentation, the security log, the witness statements from Pete and Tommy and Sandra, everything. Formal submission. By tomorrow morning. You have it all. I have it all, Ray said. I've been building this file for 2 weeks. Then send it. A beat. Marcus, Ray said. After tomorrow morning, this is no longer something we're driving. The federal side takes the wheel. Whatever happens next happens on their timeline. That's fine, Marcus said. You trust that? Marcus looked at Emily's drawing on the wall, the motorcycles with their 2 large wheels. I trust that Cross is running out of road, he said, and I trust that 9 days from now, 400 riders are going to be on Route 7. Everything else takes care of itself. He hung up and sat in the quiet of the garage for a long time. Somewhere across town, Garrett was in his own home, doing the arithmetic of a man who has realized too late that the walls are closer than they looked. Somewhere in a field office 40 miles away, an agent was reading a cover note that contained the phrase active evidence destruction and reaching for his phone. And somewhere in a house on Maple Street, a 6-year-old girl with 2 uneven pigtails was asleep, her small chest rising and falling, completely unaware that the machine built to destroy her future was in this moment beginning to destroy itself. Marcus turned off the garage light. 9 days. He could hold 9 days. The morning of the ride, Marcus woke at 4:30 and did not move for several minutes. He lay in the dark and ran through everything. Not the logistics Darnell had. The logistics, Pete had the staging coordination, Ray had the legal documentation locked and ready, but the human things, the variables that don't appear on spreadsheets. He thought about Cross, who had gone quiet in the last 4 days in a way that was not the quiet of a man who had given up. It was the quiet of a man who was watching the ground shift under his feet and had not yet decided whether to jump or run. He thought about Garrett, who had stopped badging in after hours 2 days ago, which meant either he had finished moving what he needed to move or he had realized the walls were closing and stopped. He thought about the federal agent who had called Ray yesterday with a single sentence, "We're aware of the event date. We'll be watching." He thought about Laura, who had called him the night before at 9:30. "I can't sleep," she had said. "Me neither." "Is tomorrow really happening?" "Tomorrow is really happening." A long pause. "Emily wants to come, to watch the start. I told her I'd think about it." "Bring her," Marcus said. "Put her right at the front where she can see." Another pause. "What if something goes wrong?" "Something will go wrong," Marcus said. "Something always goes wrong. That's not the question. The question is whether it goes wrong enough to stop us." He let that sit for a second. "It won't." Laura had been quiet for a moment. Then she said very softly, "Thank you, Marcus. I don't know if I've said that enough." "You've said it enough. I mean, for all of it, for not walking away when it got hard." Marcus had looked at Emily's drawing on the wall. "Nobody walked away," he said. "That's the whole point." Now in the 4:30 dark, he sat up and got dressed and drove to the garage. By 6 a.m., the first riders were arriving. Not from Redwood County, from 3 states away. A chapter out of Ohio that had seen the video, the flashbang video, the 140,000 view video, and made the decision as a group to drive through the night to be here. They pulled into the staging area in a formation of 22 bikes, and their road captain, a heavy-set man named Gerald with a beard down to his chest, walked up to Marcus and extended a hand. "Didn't know you personally," Gerald said. "Didn't need to. Watched that video and knew everything I needed to know." Marcus shook his hand. "You drove through the night." "My granddaughter got sick 2 years ago," Gerald said. "Different situation, different outcome, but I know what that mother's face looks like." He shrugged like it was simple. We drove. By 7:30, the staging area held 160 riders. By 8:15, 240. By 9, when the event was scheduled to begin its formation march to Route 7, the count had passed 380, and bikes were still arriving. The coordinator, a woman named Denise, who had organized charity events for the chapter for 11 years, was moving through the crowd with a radio clipped to her jacket and the focused calm of someone who has planned for exactly this and is watching it exceed expectations. "We're going to hit 450, she told Marcus at 9:10. "Maybe 470. "How are the media positions?" 11 camera crews, 3 network affiliates, 2 national outlets. She paused. "And there are 2 helicopters. 1 local news one I haven't identified yet." Marcus looked up. "The second one?" "I know," she said. "I'm watching it." Laura arrived at 9:20 with Emily on her hip, which was technically too old for a 6-year-old, but Emily had asked and Laura had said yes because today was not a day for rules about being too big. Emily was wearing a small leather vest. Marcus stopped when he saw it. It was child-sized, obviously custom black, with a small patch on the back that read simply, "Emily Honorary Member." He had ordered it 3 weeks ago and given it to Laura to keep until today. He had not been sure she would bring it. Emily spotted him across the crowd and pointed at herself. "Look," she said loudly, "I'm one of you." Several of the riders nearby heard her. One of them, a tall man from the Ohio chapter, laughed out loud, a real laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere unguarded. Someone else started clapping, then several others. Emily looked around at the applause with the expression of someone who has decided this is all perfectly correct and expected. Laura was not crying. She was doing the thing where she was actively choosing not to cry. Her jaw set, her eyes bright and slightly too wide. Marcus walked over. He crouched down to Emily's level, same as the first day. "You ready?" he said. "I've been ready," Emily said. At 9:45, the formation began moving toward Route 7, 461 riders. Marcus rode at the front, Darnell to his left. The road was theirs, legally permitted, court-ordered, constitutionally protected, and they moved onto it with the particular sound that several hundred motorcycles make together. Not chaotic, not aggressive, but enormous and deep, and somehow in a way that is hard to explain to someone who hasn't heard it, like something that cannot be stopped. The blockade was 3/4 of a mile up Route 7. Marcus saw it from a distance and had a moment, just a moment, a single breath where he absorbed exactly what Cross had assembled. 3 snowplows sitting sideways across the highway. Behind them, a row of vehicles. And in front of them, deputies in tactical gear, riot shields up, standing in a line that stretched from the shoulder to the guardrail. He counted 70, 75, 80 officers. He could hear the helicopters above. He slowed. The formation behind him slowed in sequence, the sound dropping by degrees until 461 bikes were stopped and idling approximately 200 feet from the blockade. Silence relative to what it had been. Marcus put down his kickstand and got off his bike. Darnell said low and fast, "Marcus, stay here." "Marcus, stay here, Bombe." He looked at Darnell, once direct and final. "All of you, nobody moves until I come back." He walked forward alone. The distance between the formation and the blockade was 200 feet, and he covered it without hurrying his hands at his sides. Nothing in them, his pace steady and his chin level. He was aware of the camera helicopters overhead. He was aware of the 11 crews along the side of the road. He was aware that this moment, this specific image, one man in a black vest walking toward 80 armed deputies and 3 snowplows, was being broadcast in real time to an audience he couldn't count. He was 50 feet from the line when Cross stepped forward. Cross was in a sheriff's uniform, campaign ready. He had clearly understood the optics of today in the same way Marcus had, which meant he had dressed for the cameras, which meant he still believed he could win the narrative. Marcus stopped when they were 10 feet apart. Cross said, "This road is closed. The permit is suspended pending public safety review." Marcus said, "Judge Holloway granted that permit 6 days ago. You don't have the authority to suspend it unilaterally." "I have the authority to protect the public safety of this county," Cross said, "and I'm exercising it." "You're breaking the law," Marcus said. He kept his voice conversational. The cameras were too far to pick up individual words. The helicopters would have directional audio, but the ground crews probably wouldn't. And he was aware that the conversation he was having right now was not for broadcast. It was for Cross. "You know that. Your legal team knows that. And there are people watching this who know things about you that you don't know they know." Something moved behind Cross's eyes. Small, fast. "Move these plows," Marcus said, "or this becomes the last public appearance of your career." Cross kept his face together. He was good at that. He had been performing for cameras for 20 years, and he knew how to hold a surface. "That sounds like a threat," Cross said. "It's a statement of fact," Marcus said. He reached into his vest and produced the envelope. He held it up between 2 fingers. Cross looked at it. His expression did not change. "You know what's in here," Marcus said. "Or you can guess. Redwood Asset Management, LLC. 3 years of transfer records. 2 names inside your department who signed off on the audit restructure. Federal routing numbers." He paused. "And a security key card log from your own department system showing your deputy chief removing physical records after hours on 3 separate nights last week." The line of deputies 20 feet behind Cross could not hear this. The cameras could not hear this. The only people in the world who could hear it were Marcus Hale and Daniel Cross standing 10 feet apart on a county highway with the sound of 461 idling motorcycles in the background and 2 news helicopters overhead. Cross's jaw moved once. "The federal inquiry has been open for 6 days," Marcus said, his voice dropping slightly. "By this time tomorrow, it's not going to be a preliminary inquiry anymore. The moment you ordered those plows onto this road today, you gave them obstruction of a court-ordered public assembly to add to what they already have." He let that settle. "There is a version of today where this goes worse for you and a version where it goes less worse. The plow version is the first one." Cross looked at him for a long moment. 12 seconds. Marcus counted them. On second 8, something changed in Cross's face. Not breaking Cross was not the breaking type, and Marcus knew it, but a calculation completing. The math finishing, the number coming out wrong in a way that could no longer be argued with. On second 12, Cross turned his head slightly and said something to the deputy beside him. The deputy spoke into a radio. Nothing happened for 4 seconds. Then the center snowplow's engine turned over. Marcus watched Cross's face while it happened. He watched the man absorb what he was doing. Not a retreat, Cross would not call it that. Cross would call it a tactical decision or a procedural adjustment. He would find the language for it that preserved something. But Marcus watched it and knew what it was. It was a man who had built something for 3 years, built it carefully and invisibly, and with the full confidence that it would hold, watching it come apart in real time in front of a national broadcast audience. The snowplow moved. The second one moved. The third, the line of deputies stepped back in sequence, shields, lowering the formation, dissolving, and the highway opened up in front of Marcus, like something that had always been there waiting. He stood there for one more moment, then he turned and walked back to his bike. The crowd along the side of the road, locals, families, people from Redwood County who had come to watch, started making noise before Marcus was halfway back. Not cheering exactly, more like exhaling. The sound a room makes when something that was about to go very wrong doesn't. Darnell had his eyes on Marcus's face the entire walk back. When Marcus got to his bike, Darnell said, "It worked." "Put it in gear," Marcus said. He swung onto his bike. He looked back once at the 460 riders behind him, strangers from Ohio, neighbors from Redwood County, men who had driven through the night for a granddaughter they'd never met, men who had known Marcus for 20 years and showed up because that's what you do. And he felt something move through him that he did not have a word for and didn't try to name. He put it in gear. He rode through. And behind him, in a sound that shook the highway, and the guardrails, and the chests of everyone standing on the shoulder watching 460 engines followed. Not aggressive, not triumphant, controlled and deliberate, and absolutely completely unstoppable. Cross stood at the side of the road and watched them pass. He did not move. He did not speak. He stood with his hands at his sides and his jaw set and his uniform pressed and his face performing something that was trying to be dignity and not quite making it. 60 seconds of motorcycles, then 80, then the sound fading but not disappearing, rolling forward up the highway. His phone buzzed. He looked at it. The message was from his campaign manager. 4 words. "We need to talk. Now." Cross put the phone in his pocket. At the side of the road, 20 feet from Cross, a deputy named Raines, who had been with the department for 11 years and had followed every order given to him, today watched the last of the motorcycles clear the blockade point and thought about the fact that he had spent this morning in riot gear on a county highway to stop a charity ride for a 6-year-old girl. He unclipped his riot shield and set it on the ground. He didn't say anything to anyone. He just walked back to his vehicle. The donation total crossed $140,000 at 11:14 a.m. while the ride was still moving. Denise, coordinating from the endpoint staging area, watched the number tick up on her phone and texted Marcus a single line, "She's going to Seattle." Marcus got the text at a red light, read it, and put the phone away. At the endpoint, a community park on the east side of Redwood County, Laura was standing at the barrier with Emily on her shoulders because Emily had demanded the highest possible vantage point, and Laura had again said yes. Emily heard them before she saw them. The sound arrived first rolling in from up the road building, from something felt in the sternum, into something heard in the ears, into something that was simply everywhere. Her eyes went wide. "Mama," she said. "Mama, I can hear them." "I know, baby." "How many are there?" "So many," Laura said. "So many." The first bikes came around the bend, and Emily Carter, 6 years old in her small leather vest with her name on the back, put both hands over her mouth and stared. And stared. And then she took her hands away, and she screamed, not in fear, in the pure, uncontained joy of a child who has never seen anything so large and loud and alive. And the sound of her screaming was swallowed completely by the sound of 460 engines, and nobody heard it but Laura, who felt it in her bones and held her daughter's legs and did not trust herself to look up. Marcus came through at the front. He saw them at the barrier. He saw Laura. He saw Emily in the small leather vest with her hands over her mouth and her eyes as wide as he had ever seen a child's eyes. He lifted one hand off the handlebars. Emily waved back with both arms. He kept riding. The money kept coming in. At 12:40 p.m., the donation total hit $172,000. By 2 o'clock, when the event was officially closing and the riders were dispersing and the community park was still loud with several hundred people who didn't want to leave yet, it crossed 200,000. Marcus was standing near the bikes talking to Gerald from Ohio when Ray called. He stepped away to take it. "How are we?" Marcus said. Ray's voice was different, careful in a specific way. "The event is a success beyond what we projected." "I know. What else?" A beat. "The federal contact called me 40 minutes ago. He was watching the broadcast. He saw the blockade. And he said," Ray paused. "He said what Cross did this morning, obstructing a court-permitted assembly in front of a national audience, gave them what they needed to accelerate from inquiry to formal investigation." Another pause. "Marcus, this is happening, not in weeks, not in months." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "There's one more thing," Ray said. "Say it." Garrett came in this morning, before the event. He walked into the department at 7 a.m. and asked to speak to the county attorney. Ray's voice was very controlled now. "He's asking about immunity." The word landed clean and final. Garrett was flipping. The man who had built the accounting structure, who had run the audit cycle, who had been moving physical records out of the building and in the dark. Garrett had watched the snowplows move on a live broadcast and done the same math Cross had done and reached a different conclusion. Cross had chosen to stand on the highway. Garrett had chosen to walk into a lawyer's office. "How long before Cross knows?" Marcus said. "If he doesn't already, hours." Marcus looked across the park. He could see Laura talking to another mother near the barrier, Emily between them, showing someone her vest. He could see Gerald from Ohio sitting on his bike, laughing at something Darnell had said. He could see 400 riders, people who had driven through the night, people who had given up their Saturday, people who had no personal stake in Redwood County except the kind of stake that human beings take in other human beings when they decide that's the kind of people they want to be. "Ray," Marcus said, "what happens to Cross now?" Ray was quiet for a long moment. "What always happens," he said, "when a man builds something on the wrong foundation and the ground finally shifts." Marcus hung up. He stood there. The sun was high and the park was loud, and somewhere in the crowd, Emily was explaining her vest to a stranger with the authority of someone who has decided she belongs exactly where she is. Marcus put his phone in his pocket and went to find her. Garrett signed his cooperation agreement on a Tuesday. Ray called Marcus at 7:18 in the morning before the garage was open, before the coffee was made, and said it the way he said things that mattered, without buildup, without softening. "It's done." Garrett flipped. Full cooperation. He's giving them everything. Marcus sat down on the workbench stool. "Everything," he said. 3 years of transfer records, the LLC structure, the PA distribution schedule, the names of 2 county board members who knew and looked the other way, the internal audit falsifications, and Ray paused for half a beat. He's giving them Cross directly. Emails, documented conversations, a phone recording Garrett made 14 months ago during a meeting where Cross explicitly directed him to reclassify a seized asset to avoid triggering a state audit threshold. Marcus was quiet. "Marcus, a phone recording, Cross's own voice. When do they move?" "That's not our timeline anymore," Ray said, "but based on what the agent told me, not long. They don't sit on a cooperating witness. The longer Garrett is inside the department while cooperating, the more exposure everybody has." "Does Cross know?" "Not yet. Garrett called in sick yesterday. Cross's office released a statement that the department is cooperating fully with all legitimate legal inquiries." Ray let a dry pause land. "So no, Cross doesn't know." "He will soon." "Yes," Ray said, "he will." Marcus hung up and sat in the quiet garage for a long time. He looked at Emily's drawing. The motorcycles with their 2 large wheels had started to curl at the edges from the tape, and he had retaped the corners twice now, rather than take it down. He thought about what Ray had said, not our timeline anymore. He had spent 4 weeks driving this thing forward through sheer will and preparation and the refusal to stop moving. He had made calls at midnight and read documents at 4 a.m., and held his people together through a raid, an intimidation, and a highway blockade, and the particular grinding fear that comes from watching a powerful man aim everything he has directly at you. He had not slept a full night in 3 weeks, and now it was out of his hands. That should have felt like relief. It felt like something more complicated, like standing down after a long time at attention and not quite knowing what to do with your hands. He got up and made coffee and opened the garage. The donation total had closed at $314,000. $314,000 against a treatment cost of $250,000. There was $64,000 in surplus, which Ray had already been in contact with the fiscal sponsor about. It would go to a pediatric medical fund at Redwood County General designated for families who couldn't cover treatment gaps. Laura had asked for that specifically. She had said, somebody else is going to be sitting at a kitchen table doing math that doesn't work out. Put it there. Laura had said that on the phone 4 days after the ride, and Marcus had written it down, and when he called the fiscal sponsor, he had read it back word for word. Emily's treatment appointment in Seattle was scheduled for the following Thursday. Laura called Marcus the night before they left. "We're packed," she said. Emily packed herself. She packed 4 stuffed animals and 1 shirt. "Priorities," Marcus said. "She asked if you could come." Marcus was quiet for a second. "To Seattle. I told her you had the garage." A pause. "She said you could close it for 1 day." He smiled, which was something his face did rarely and meant something when it did. "Tell her I'll be here when she gets back. That's a better deal." "Marcus," Laura's voice shifted. She had something she'd been holding. He could hear the weight of it. "I want to tell you something, and I need you to just listen and not deflect it, because you're going to want to deflect it." "All right. What you did, what all of you did, I'm not going to be able to pay it back. I know that. I've been trying to find the right words for weeks, and I don't have them. So I'm just going to say this. Emily is going to grow up. She's going to be a person. She's going to have a life." Laura's voice was very steady, which meant it was costing her. "That's because of you. That's a whole life, and I need you to know that I know that." Marcus looked at the drawing on the wall. "We didn't do it for the knowing," he said, "but I hear you, and I'm glad." A long quiet. "Get some sleep," he said. "She's going to need you sharp tomorrow." "Yeah," Laura said softly. "Yeah." 3 days after Laura and Emily flew to Seattle, Cross's campaign manager held a press conference. Not Cross, his campaign manager, a detail that everyone noticed. The manager, a carefully dressed man named Oliver Pratt, who had run 3 successful county campaigns and knew exactly how to read a room, stood at the podium and announced in flat professional language that Sheriff Daniel Cross was suspending his campaign for state legislature, effective immediately, citing the need to focus on departmental matters during an ongoing review process. He used the phrase review process 4 times. He did not say the word federal. He did not say the word investigation. He did not take questions. The statement was 63 seconds long. Jenny Walsh's piece went up 12 minutes later. Her headline, "Cross Suspends Campaign, Federal Sources Confirm Active Criminal Investigation into County Sheriff's Office." By noon, it had been picked up nationally. Marcus read it at the workbench and felt nothing dramatic. Not satisfaction, exactly. Something quieter. The particular feeling of watching something arrive that you have been working toward for long enough that the arrival feels less like a victory and more like a door finally closing. Darnell read it over his shoulder and said, "How do you feel?" "Tired," Marcus said honestly. "Good tired or bad tired?" Marcus thought about it. "Done tired, like when you finish a job that took longer than it should have." Darnell nodded. That made sense to him. He went back to work. The federal arrest came 8 days later. It came at Cross's own campaign suspension press conference. The formal one, the one with the photographers and the local officials, and the careful staging that Pratt had arranged to make Cross look like a man making a dignified choice rather than a man with no remaining options. Cross had written a statement. He had practiced it. He had dressed for the cameras one more time, pressed uniform silver temples, the whole performance assembled and ready. He was 30 seconds into reading it when the agents walked in. 4 of them. Federal IDs visible. Moving with the specific practiced calm of people who have done this before and know that certainty of purpose reads better than speed. The room went completely silent. Cross stopped reading. He looked at the agents. He looked at the room. He looked at the cameras that were still rolling, because cameras don't stop rolling. That's not what cameras do. One of the agents said his name, said he was under arrest, read the charges in a level voice that filled the silent room, completely racketeering, money laundering, abuse of power, civil rights violations, obstruction of justice. Cross said nothing. He put his hands up and behind his back and let them put the cuffs on And Marcus later thought that was almost the most telling thing Cross did in the entire 4 weeks. The practiced way he surrendered, like a man who had always known somewhere deep down that this moment existed and had rehearsed his way through it without ever letting himself believe it would actually come. The cameras caught everything. The footage ran on national news for 3 days. Garrett was arrested the same afternoon separately at a location that was not disclosed. His cooperation agreement had been signed, but cooperation agreements don't grant immunity before charges are formally filed. They reduce sentencing exposure. He would testify. He would receive consideration. He was not walking away clean. 2 county board members received target letters. The deputy who had run the internal audit falsifications resigned the next morning before he could be suspended. At Hank's Diner, the regular with the ham and eggs and extra toast watched the news on his phone at the counter and said to no one in particular, "Took long enough." Debbie, refilling his coffee, said, "It took exactly as long as it needed to." Marcus heard about the arrest from Ray, who called while Marcus was under a car. He rolled out from under it and answered. Ray said, "It happened. Cross is in federal custody." Marcus sat on the concrete floor with the phone in his hand. "You there?" Ray said. "I am here." "You all right?" Marcus thought about it. The genuine version of the question, not the reflexive one. "Yeah," he said, "I am. The civil rights complaint we filed after the raid, the department's counsel called me this morning. They want to settle. Tell them we'll talk when Cross is sentenced." "That's going to be a while." "I know, but I want it on record that we didn't rush to cash out. This wasn't about money." Ray was quiet for a moment. "I know it wasn't. How much of what happens next do we need to be involved in?" "Testimony, potentially at some point down the road. But the heavy lifting is done. The federal side has what they need." A pause. "Marcus, you did something that very few people would have known how to do. You built a federal corruption case from a charity permit application and a blocked highway. I've been a lawyer for 22 years, and I want you to understand how unusual that is. We had the right information at the right time." "You had the right instincts," Ray said. "The information would have meant nothing to someone who didn't know what to do with it." Marcus didn't say anything to that. He looked up at the underside of the car above him, the rust along the frame, the specific ordinary reality of work that needs doing. "Get some rest," Ray said. "Seriously, you look terrible. You can't see me. I can hear it." Marcus actually laughed at that, short reel. "I'll rest when the work is done." "The work is done. There's a transmission in Bay 2 that's been waiting a week," Marcus said. Ray made a sound that was not quite a laugh, but was something in the same family. "All right," he said. "Talk soon." Marcus hung up. He rolled back under the car. The photo arrived on a Thursday morning, 6 weeks later. It came in a plain envelope, addressed to the garage, Laura's handwriting on the outside. Inside was a single photograph printed on regular paper, the way you print things when you want them to feel real and not precious, not framed, not laminated, just a photo. Emily Carter, sitting up in a hospital bed in Seattle, was smiling. Not a posed smile, not a be brave for the camera smile. A real one, the full-body kind she'd had since she was old enough to have expressions, the kind where her eyes crinkled and her shoulders came up slightly, like happiness was a physical force she was bracing against. She was wearing her small leather vest over a hospital gown. She was holding a stuffed bear in one hand and giving a thumbs up with the other. On the back of the photo, in Emily's handwriting, large, slightly crooked, fiercely committed, it said, "I told you I was going to get better." And below that, in Laura's handwriting, smaller, "She did." Marcus stood at the workbench and held the photo for a long time. Darnell came in from the bay and saw Marcus standing there and stopped. He looked at Marcus's face. He didn't ask anything. He walked over slowly, and Marcus held out the photo without looking up, and Darnell took it and looked at it. Neither of them said anything for almost a full minute. Then Darnell handed it back and cleared his throat and said, "I've got something in my eye." "Yeah," Marcus said, "Me too." He walked to the wall beside the door where the drawing was still taped, the motorcycles with their 2 large wheels, the careful crayon lines of a child who drew what she meant rather than what she could, and he reached up and taped the photo beside it. The drawing and the photo, before and after, the hope and the proof. Pete came in an hour later with Tommy behind him, and they saw the photo. And Pete put his hand on Marcus's shoulder briefly without saying anything, which was how Pete expressed most of the things that mattered to him. Tommy looked at it for a long time and then said, She's got the vest on. She wore it the whole time, apparently, Marcus said, according to Laura. In the hospital. In the hospital. Tommy shook his head slowly, not in disbelief, in something closer to wonder. Tough kid. Takes after her mother. Gerald from Ohio called that afternoon. He had seen the news about Cross and wanted to know if it was real, and Marcus confirmed that it was, and Gerald said, "Good, that's how it's supposed to go." Then he asked about Emily, and Marcus told him about the photo, and Gerald went quiet for a moment, and then said, "When she grows up, you tell her there are 22 guys in Ohio who drove through the night for her and would do it again." "I'll tell her," Marcus said. "Make sure she knows it wasn't charity," Gerald said. "Make sure she knows it was a choice, that people looked at the situation and chose to show up. I want her to know that's how it works when it works right." Marcus thought about that after the call ended. He thought about what Gerald had said, a choice, and he thought about all the places in the last 5 weeks where someone had chosen. The anonymous source who had driven to a rest stop at 9 in the morning with an envelope. Ray, who had called in a 2-year-old favor without hesitation. Pete, whose hands had shaken on the phone, but who had written the statement anyway. Laura, who had walked into a garage full of bikers because she had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The riders from 3 states who had driven through the night because they saw a video and decided that was enough of a reason. Nobody had been required to do any of it. Every single person had chosen. He was still thinking about it when his phone rang one more time that evening. Unknown number, but not the anonymous source, different pattern. He answered. It was a reporter, national outlet. She wanted to comment on the Cross arrest on the charity ride on the federal case. She asked several questions in quick succession, and he let her finish. And then he said, "I don't have a comment on the legal case. That's in the right hands now. Can you speak to what the Hells Angels hope to accomplish with the charity ride?" She asked. "We hope to raise enough money to get a little girl her treatment," he said. "That's what we accomplished." And the confrontation with Sheriff Cross, the highway standoff. That image was broadcast nationally. "What were you trying to say with that?" Marcus thought about it for a second. "Nothing," he said. "We weren't trying to say anything. We were trying to get somewhere. The road was in the way. Then it wasn't." A pause on her end. "That's it. That's it." She tried one more angle. "Some people are calling this a David and Goliath story, bikers versus a corrupt sheriff, the little guy winning." "We didn't ride against anyone," Marcus said. "We rode for someone. There's a difference. When you ride against something, you're letting that thing define you. When you ride for something," he stopped, thought. "You already know what you are." He ended the call. The garage was quiet. The evening light was changing. He sat for a moment with everything that had happened compressed into the silence, the 5 weeks, the permit and the raid and the blockade and the envelope and the federal case and the photo of a 6-year-old girl in a hospital bed with her thumbs up and her vest on, and he let himself feel the weight of it without trying to manage it into something smaller. Then he got up and walked to the wall. He straightened the photo, straightened the drawing beside it, took a step back and looked at both of them together. Darnell appeared in the doorway of the bay. "You locking up?" "Yeah," Marcus said, "in a minute." Darnell looked at the wall, at the drawing and the photos side by side. He was quiet for a moment. "You going to say something?" Darnell asked. "Mark the moment. Say a thing." Marcus looked at the photo one more time, at Emily's thumbs up and her crinkled eyes and the small leather vest that said honorary member on the back, at the words she had written in large, slightly crooked, fiercely committed handwriting. "I told you I was going to get better." "Already said it," Marcus said. He turned off the light and walked out. They hadn't ridden for revenge. They hadn't ridden for headlines or history or to prove a point to a man who had aimed everything he had at them and missed. They had ridden for a child who asked her mother for a promise and got one, and for a mother who made that promise without knowing yet how she'd keep it, and for the $64,000 gap between what the world owed them and what the world had given them so far. They had ridden because the road was there and the cause was real, and 461 people had decided on the same morning that this was exactly the kind of thing worth riding for. And Emily Carter grew up.